everything you own, is no longer yours. The words echoed in the courtroom like a thunderclap. Richard's heart sank as the lawyer read his father's will. The mansion, the cars, the billion-dollar company gone, all transferred to the very woman he had just abandoned after 15 years of marriage. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a reckoning, a betrayal turned inside out. This is the story of a man who left his black wife for a secretary, only to watch his fortune crumble. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. For 15 years, Denise stood by her husband Richard through every storm. She was his partner in marriage, his strength in struggle, and the silent architect of his success. A black woman in a world that rarely gave her credit, Denise carried herself with quiet dignity. She raised their children, managed their home, and endured the whispers from his colleagues who questioned why a wealthy white businessman would marry her. But Richard always insisted he loved her. At least, that's what she thought. Life in their mansion looked perfect from the outside: vacations, gala dinners, and a growing empire. But beneath the polished surface, Richard's eyes had begun to wander. Younger women in short skirts at the office caught his attention. One in particular, a secretary named Laura, became more than just an employee. Denise didn't see it coming, but betrayal was already walking through her front door. Richard convinced himself he deserved more. He told himself Denise had grown dull, weighed down by years of loyalty he no longer valued. His affair with Laura gave him the illusion of youth and freedom. Soon, the whispers at work weren't about his interracial marriage anymore. They were about his secret romance. The day came when Richard finally pushed divorce papers across the mahogany table. Denise's hands trembled as she read the cold lines of betrayal. He didn't even flinch. To him, Denise was just a chapter he wanted to close. What Richard didn't know was that his father's estate still controlled most of his wealth. The old man had passed just months before, leaving behind an ironclad will with conditions Richard hadn't entirely bothered to read. One condition stood out like fire written in stone. My son shall inherit my fortune only if he remains loyal to the wife he has chosen. Betrayal forfeits all claims. Richard smirked when lawyers mentioned it, brushing it off as outdated nonsense. But now, standing firm in his decision to trade his wife of 15 years for a younger secretary, that clause wasn't just a sentence, it was a guillotine hanging over his twink. If you're using like a scanner app, and it's like, we're gonna die. Like, look at this. Look at this. And we look at this. And we all know I've been exploring. Empire. Friends who once praised him began whispering. Denise's silence spoke louder than his arrogance. And as the legal gears began to turn, Richard started to realize he hadn't just broken vows, he had triggered the downfall his father predicted. The will was read aloud in a hushed courtroom, where even the marble walls seemed to echo judgment. Richard's face went pale as the lawyer repeated the clause. Every asset, every company's share, every property gone. Transferred not to him but to Denise, the woman he had tried to discard. Laura, the secretary he had sacrificed everything for, slipped quietly out of the room. The press cameras captured Richard's frozen expression as his empire collapsed in real time. A man who thought he could rewrite loyalty was watching his own story being erased. Denise didn't smile, didn't gloat. She simply walked out with her head high, carrying the dignity that had taken her all along. Richard was left behind, stripped of power, wealth, and the illusion of love. Dear audience, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to give it a like. It really helps. Richard moved into a modest apartment, forgotten by the world he once ruled. The secretary who had promised him excitement was gone, leaving only silence. Denise, however, used the inheritance wisely, funding scholarships for young Black women and building programs to uplift those who had been dismissed. Just as she had once been, the story was no longer about betrayal. It was about justice. A justice written into the will of a man who knew his son's weaknesses too well. Richard had gambled loyalty for lust, and in return he lost everything, Denise. Once the shadow behind her husband became the light in countless lives. And perhaps the lesson burned deeper than money could buy. Betrayal doesn't just break hearts. It destroys empires. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.